in order to teach the computer to learn, I need to feed it 1,000,000 images. Now, if I take a kid and I show the kid the image of one cat, the kid will be able to say for the rest of his life whether that's a cat, whether something else is not a cat, and whether other breeds of cats are cats. It's actually quite interesting. Never had one, like a podcast, never actually been in one before.
Do you listen to them?
I do, actually. Lex Friedman. I happen to listen to Lex Friedman quite a lot.
Yes.
So, and who else? Huberman Lab. There is one called Huberman Lab. So mostly,
Huberman,
yeah, mostly is like science-based ones that I listen to, and yeah, mostly that. And I like specifically Friedman because I feel like I have some sort of I would say he has the kind of quiet, introverted attitude that I share, that I have as well, and yeah, that's why I end up, I guess, feeling an affinity with this podcast and with the kind of topics he brings forward.
He interviews a lot of MIT people, right? Because he's at MIT, or he was at MIT?
That's a good question. So I think he did his PhD at MIT in a robotic lab. Now he interviews people from all over the world. Like, he interviewed Chomsky, for instance. He interviewed recently Elon Musk, I believe. He interviewed Elon Musk. Who else?
Steven Pinker he had on in an early episode.
True. And
Joe Rogan's been on his.
That's true. Yeah, Joe Rogan has been also recently, like he's doing like a series on chess, and he did a couple of machine learning. Like, he does a lot of machine learning because he's a machine learning researcher. He does research on that, and he did a couple with the head of DeepMind, which was really nice. Like, it was a really nice talk. It was really beautiful with the CEO of DeepMind. There was a lot of discussion about general artificial intelligence and whatnot about the topic.
Interesting. Who runs DeepMind?
So DeepMind is a private. So I think it's owned by Google, and their whole business plan is to sell back ideas and IP to Google. Yeah, I don't think they have actual clients aside from Google. It's just a research lab, from my understanding. They shouldn't have anything else. The actual name of the CEO should be Dennis. He has a PhD in neuroscience. He's one of the smartest guys that I've ever heard in my life. He's fantastic. He's like an ex-chess master, I believe. He had a PhD in neuroscience, and I mean, it's actually quite impressive. They're by far one of the most impressive and cutting-edge lab in the machine learning space currently in the world.
Someone who was on this podcast recently, I think, is looking to get a job there.
Really?
So she's kind of biomedical engineering background, but
that's interesting. Yeah, possibly. Like, a lot of people try. It's actually really competitive.
Where's it based?
London.
And where's the CEO from?
I think he's like, I couldn't pinpoint him. It sounded like he had a British accent. I'm not sure. Like, the name doesn't sound like he's originally British, but where from? Like, I couldn't guess, to be honest. I couldn't guess.
And where, do you mind introducing yourself?
Oh yeah, sure. So I am Pietro Ferraro. I am currently I'm a research fellow at Imperial College London. I teach machine learning and sharing economy. My research is I do research in cryptocurrencies and machine learning, mostly. The two topics sound, a lot of people feel like they are related somehow. They're not. I just happen to enjoy both of them, and I do research on both. And so most of my time I do research, and the rest of my time I'm the co-founder of a company, of a startup. Just happened recently.
And where are you from?
I'm from Italy. I'm from Italy, in Sicily specifically.
Oh,
the southern
nice.
part of Italy, the most southern part, in fact.
And I almost forgot that this podcast is called Growing Up. So
Oh, really?
I ask you the first question and the
Right.
only question on the podcast. Well, I'm kind of figuring that out because then I ask some at the end. But just about books and things. But how did you grow up? Or what was your growing up like?
Oh, wow. That's a tough question. It was... 5 years ago, I would have told you, I would have given you a very different answer. My growing up was interesting. Sicily is a pretty difficult place. It was a pretty difficult place to grow up in the 90s. Like there was this mantra growing up. It was this mantra that my whole generation heard about. It was, don't speak your mind, don't close your eyes, pretend you never heard anything, pretend you never seen anything.
That's like classic mafia type.
It was like in the 90s. It was quite intense. They were called the lead years, the years of lead, I guess, in Palermo in Sicily, and it was quite tough from that perspective. It got a lot better. There is still like a strong influence of mafia within the island, but it's not nearly as strong as it was 30 years ago, quite frankly. So growing up there, from this perspective, it was pretty like, for other people, other people look at that and they think, oh wow, that must have been really tough. The reality is, like, you grow up there, you don't know, like, that's all you know. You know what I mean? It didn't feel that tough. I think now that it could have been easier, and certainly it has affected me in many ways. But at the time, I didn't feel like I was going through some kind of ordeal, and yeah, like family-wise, my parents they divorced when they were 7, and I grew up with my mom and my grandaunt. My dad wasn't really around much, and
Were you in a town, or where were you?
Palermo, yes.
Oh.
I come from the biggest town in Sicily.
Yeah.
It's actually...
I've been there, but when I was like 12 or something, and I just have the best memories of climbing Mount Etna and picking up there had been an eruption, so there was like lava coming down, and picking it up and like burning through my clothes.
Are you serious?
Yeah, just, when you get to the bottom.
Yeah, of course.
How it's like obviously there was like the lava where it's like red and hot,
right.
But then closer to the bottom, the lava's moving really slowly.
You
and
touched
I was
it.
like, oh, these rocks are moving. That's so cool. Picked it up, and
Holy Jesus.
And then it was like so hot. Put it on my jumper, and it burnt a hole through.
Yeah.
And then I kept the jumper for so long because I was like, look how cool this is.
That's actually really cool. I'd never heard of that. Like, you picked it with your hand. That must have been, like, did you burn your hand? Like, did you have to go to the hospital because of that?
No, I think it was fine. Because it was so quick that it happened.
Right,
and it was when the rock's still totally, like, it looks like a rock. No, near the bottom. So it's,
no, I know, but still, for the fact that they're still moving, it means that they're really hot.
Oh, that was so cool for a 12-year-old.
That must have been insane. Actually, you know what? That's actually interesting. I've never climbed Mount Etna.
Huh.
I actually am from Sicily, and I never did that. That's something I never ended up doing, and I deeply regret it, and I promised myself... I know, I'll do that as soon as possible.
How far away is that from where you grew up?
No, not much. It's like a couple of hours, 2 hours and a half driving.
Yeah.
So nothing special.
Yeah.
The island is not that big, to be honest. Still packs 7 million people, but not that big, to be honest.
Is it really?
Yeah.
7 million? Wow.
Whole Italy is like 56 million or something like that.
Yeah. Sicily is like the soccer ball, like the football that the boot is kicking.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the closest part to Africa, and in fact, like, you can totally see that how close it is to Africa and to the Middle East, because like we're practically, like I always joke about that, but I always feel like we are an Arabic province. We actually come from an Arabic province, quite frankly. So.
Do you have many immigrants there?
We have, well, now we have a lot, because after various interventions from NATO in the Libyc affairs and in Africa, we ended up having a serious refugee issue. Yes, like Sicily. It's not. I don't think it's as bad as it used to be like 3 or 4 years ago. Pretty sure it's still pretty bad, but at least they don't. Like 3 years ago, you would have quite commonly. 4 years ago, actually. 3 years ago, it was the pandemic. You had literally like pictures of kids, like of corpses of kids getting to shore. Yeah.
Coming via boats.
Yeah, coming via boats, and like they would just sink in the middle of the Mediterranean, and they would get washed to shore.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
And it's people smugglers that.
Yeah. It's mostly smugglers. Yeah. It's mostly smugglers that try to bring them in. And it's like it's a shit show. Pardon the language, but it's really really bad. Like,
where are they coming from mostly?
Libya, I believe Libya. I mean, they are coming through Libya. Not sure if they all mostly come from Libya. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I'm not entirely sure exactly where the nationalities are, but mostly they would be like from Africa, mostly from Africa.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
I was gonna say, why did you say your answer would have been different 5 years ago about Sicily?
Not about Sicily, but how I felt like I grew up. It was more of a therapy helped a lot into putting into perspective. I was angrier 5 years ago. I was a lot angrier about the ways that divorce mostly shaped my infancy, my adolescence. I was more resentful and angry about that. Therapy really helped me put things into perspective, into feeling, into letting go most of that anger, I would say. Into letting go most of the anger and into coming to terms with what I've been through, the fact that I cannot change what I've been through, and despite acknowledging the injustice of some of the stuff that I felt like happened to me, I learned a lot from it. So I guess I can say I managed to put that behind my back in some sense. So that's mostly why.
Was the anger directed towards your dad mainly, or just at the world?
It was just anger. I wouldn't say it was directed at anybody. Like one of the things that one of the elements of me that I feel I developed after the breakup was the fact that I really struggled to direct anger at somebody specific. I'm not sure exactly why. I imagine it might have been a mixture of fear of the repercussions. You know, like you get angry at somebody, they get angry back, and you don't really know how to handle that conflict. So possibly I learned that at the time. And no, it was mostly anger towards my parents, and mostly my dad. Yeah, my dad definitely the most. I felt disappointment because I never managed to really create a relationship with the man. So indirectly, I guess. Indirectly it was anger towards my father and towards everything that happened in between.
Is there any hope for that now with your dad?
Good question. I there's always hope, you know. I guess it's a matter of how much effort you're willing to put into something. I would say yes, because I am more open, let's say, to that, but it's still So on the one side, I am more open towards that, but on the other side, my dad is a very, I call him an emotional analphabet, if it makes sense. My dad, he's not a bad person, but he simply doesn't know how to express and process. To my dad, being hungry is a feeling. Like, like how do you feel that? Hungry. It's like, that's not really a feeling. Like, it's not an emotion, that like your like I understand why you would say that, but that's not a state, like your internal emotional state doesn't really reflect your internal emotional state. So it is a bit difficult because it's very complicated to form an emotional bond with somebody that just has struggled so much into sharing what he feels and what he thinks, you know. And yeah, also my dad, I was fascinated at some point in my life when I found what mansplaining meant. Right, I never really understood what it meant, and then somebody explained it to me, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what my dad did to me my entire life. Like, like it's like that's exactly what I've been through my entire life, like talking to somebody without acknowledging nor their experience nor that they're even there. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, do you know how to do this? You're about to answer. That person doesn't even wait for your answer because it doesn't really matter that you're there. All they want to do is really go on with their monologue and assert their ego within the conversation.
Interesting.
And
okay, so it's not even like you're stupid. It's just like you're not even relevant.
Yeah, no. I don't think that behind mansplaining there is. I mean, maybe for the most case, but I don't think that it's necessarily that they think that the girl in front of them is stupid. Is the thought that they don't even acknowledge the agency of the person to engage into a conversation. The conversation is really within themselves. And yeah, for my dad, it was that mostly. It wasn't that he thought I was stupid. It's just that this whole conversation wasn't an exchange. It was a benefit. It was for his benefit, and the whole conversation revolved around him explaining, or him showing off how intelligent and cultured and clever it was.
This is such an interesting interpretation of. I love this because I mean, not that this happens to me,
Okay, I got it.
but I rarely experience this, but I did experience it recently, and I really felt, but maybe it was some kind of gender thing because it was me and a friend. It was like I would ask the question and the answer would always be directed, like the eye contact, everything totally directed at my friend who is male, but it's like we have the exact same like qualification. Do you know what I mean? So I'm like, I feel like it's like gender is the only thing difference, but maybe I realize now you saying that it could even be that person felt awkward because the other, so it's like it's just more comfortable to speak to this person who he knew better, but it's actually just about him. Like, he's not interested in the audience at all. Like, it's not about me being a woman. It's about he's just talking to himself about how smart he is.
Exactly. That's actually the best. That's actually so fucked up if you think about that. You're like, holy Jesus, I don't exist for you, do I? It's like, it doesn't matter that I'm here.
Yeah, and that really doesn't feel good.
It's really not being acknowledged. I guess, like, if people don't really understand how painful it is to not be acknowledged, especially by somebody that you have.
Yeah, it's your dad.
Yeah, or from a coworker, from a colleague. You know, not like even in a work environment. It's really, really, really painful to not be acknowledged on that perspective. Yeah. So I would say that ties back to the fact that 5 years ago I would have given you a vastly different answer. I would have been bitter.
What kind of things do you think you would have said?
I would have probably moped a lot, a lot more about it. I would have. I feel like, I feel that 5 years ago, I would have tied still a good portion of my personality around that. Like I feel that who I was still, and how I would present to somebody. Like that story would have been the story that I would have used to introduce who I am. In some sense, like, do you want to understand who I am? Then you should listen to this story.
That you were abandoned, or
Well, not really abandoned, but you know what I mean. Like that my parents were divorced. Like that
you're a
relationship with
victim
my
of
father.
that.
Yeah, exactly. I would have told you that in order to know who I was, you should have gone through that. That was like the blueprint of who I was. Today, no. Today, I wouldn't bring that up practically ever. Like that wouldn't be a topic of conversation unless directly prompted, in which case I have no problem talking about it. But quite frankly, I don't think that it defines me that much. It's just a funny story. It's, if anything, at times.
So was there something that prompted you to go to therapy?
Yeah, like some intense, depression. It was mostly, it wasn't major. I think it's classified with minor, medium, and major depression, or it should be something like that. At least that's what I was told. Might be wrong. But it was bad enough that I was struggling with day-to-day life, with even minor or mild assignments. And so, I ended up trying this type of therapy that was a bit different than what I had done in the past. What I had done in the past was psychoanalysis, which is something I would recommend to everybody.
It's like Freudian.
Yeah, it was like Freudian.
Going into your past.
Yeah, it was like analysis of dreams, and that kind of like I had a very my first therapist was a psychoanalytic, yeah, and it would be like the classical me on a stool, no, sorry,
A sofa.
a sofa. Thank
Really?
you.
Lying down?
Oh yeah. That would be.
my! In Italy or here?
It was in Italy. It was literally.
I've only seen that in movies.
No. It was the proper. You lay down on the sofa and you talk.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like that.
Whereabouts in Italy was this? In
Palermo. In Palermo. It was in Palermo. It was actually like a really old school kind of Freudian. It was great. Like actually laying on the sofa is great. It because it really the way it works is normally that you're on a sofa and you're looking up and there is nothing in front of you. So that makes the association flow of ideas within your mind. It makes it a lot easier, you know. So it's actually great. Like you end up talking for 40 minutes straight about stuff, and at some point you're like, wow, what the hell have I just said? What the hell just came out of my mouth?
And are they there taking notes? As in films, you always just have
No, you know, the taking note is actually, I believe it's not done in, like, everyone I've been, like, every therapist I've seen in my life, nobody has ever taken notes. I believe that they take notes after the session, so they go through with you, and then after the session they will write down what you ended up saying.
I think I've had people taking notes, but not in a...
Like
not like they're recording, you know, in a film when it's they're on the couch and then it's like they're recording like everything is.
Tell me more about your mom. Like yeah, that's a bit. I don't know. I always felt that was a bit odd, a bit odd of a thing to do. Like I'm literally pouring my soul open in front of you, and you're doing this very cold-blooded kind of taking notes thing, and like you're reducing my life to literally 3 scribbles on a piece of paper. I don't know, I always felt it was very demeaning personally, but yeah.
So then what was the new type of therapy you
It
tried?
was called it's called functional therapy. It's something that I haven't, so apparently it's something that was prompted in Italy. It's not really that known yet outside of Italy. It's a school of therapy that I would say it's some sort of mix between CBT, cognitive behavior, between CBT and well, I wouldn't be able to really pinpoint it because we went through a lot of classical sessions, and that you would normally call like psychoanalysis, in which we go through what I've been through. And then it's interesting because what I ended up doing was what my therapist made me do for the past years, was laying down and do some kind of relaxation exercises. And that's quite interesting because it's not exactly mindfulness, the classical form of meditation, the mindfulness that we have in the West. It's literally what the therapist would do, it would bring me on the brink of sleep, right? And there, it would make me go through a series of images or like fantasies, let's say. And literally like lowering my inhibitions and all my rationality to the minimum. That's
okay.
literally,
it's like hypnosis.
I'm not sure. Maybe, you know what? Maybe it's hypnosis, but I am.
From the hypnosis I've done, this is what it sounds like.
Really?
People think hypnosis is, some weird.
And now you're a chicken.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not. It's just about being in the state. What's the state? It's like the brainwaves.
Maybe like.
So, like theta brainwaves or something like that, right. And you. Yeah, it's at that point. Oh, it's shutting off the prefrontal cortex, something like that. And then, and then you're more suggestible. So it's about changing but not in a way of like, clucking like a chick. It's like so you can change these beliefs.
That's quite interesting, yeah.
Because I don't know. I've done a lot of this because rewriting. I've also suffered with depression. I'm sorry that you have. This is so interesting because I thought we were going to talk about machine learning. I didn't really know what we were going to talk about. Or AI.
Yeah.
But I guess for the audience's benefit and for yours, so a lot of the people who I've interviewed on here, they're people who I know. So one of my best friends did an interview this morning and she talked about her parents' divorce. Wow. And another friend, the biomedical engineer, she also talked openly on this podcast about her parents' divorce. So I'm like, okay, there's
a theme here.
But they've also both suffered with mental health issues. It's just so sad when there's so many brilliant people in this world who experience this. But but my point was that for you it's like I had no idea because we literally just met in the pub.
We had literally like 30 seconds of a chat about, what was it? Belief. We chatted about belief. Belief system. Yeah. It's quite peculiar.
And then I don't even know how I was like, saying that I have this podcast. I was like, you could come and talk about whatever you do. What are you doing? You're like, I'm a lecturer at Imperial in AI or machine learning. And you were saying I don't even believe that in machine learning. So I'm like, we can discuss that.
That's great.
And then I was like, this is where I get to be proper, the basic question because I know nothing about it. But anyway, the whole theme of it's just so weird that we're talking about this because in the introduction episode or whatever to this podcast, I say that I want to bring like real story. Like I really like the Lex Friedman, what he does, but I was like also wanting to add the element of like we all suffer and have to overcome things. Yes. And this is just crazy to me that you are talking about this, but it's also the whole point of me saying this is it's easier because I don't know anything about this. Yeah. Whereas with my other friends, I know their whole story, so it's like it's difficult to ask the questions, because I don't know if they're going to be like.
Yeah, but I'm quite easy to like. I'm quite open like about that, so it's actually quite interesting. That I guess that there is some level of affinity that one develops with other people, and like a friend of mine recently was like, okay, so here's what I think about that. I literally had this conversation about that with a friend of mine, and this person was like, do you think you're attracted by people who are heavily traumatized, who suffer from trauma? And I was like, I don't think so. But I find, so, because what I believe is that all of us, everybody experiences trauma in one sense or the other. I remember listening about exactly the definition of trauma. Trauma is something that permanently changes in one way or another. It could be even positive, the way you behave. Now, I believe that the people I'm attracted to are reflective and I wouldn't say introverted, but people who are interested in engaging into deep, thoughtful conversations. And I strongly believe that the more introspective a person is, the more this person will be affected by their own trauma. Just to give you an example, my mom. My mom is not a very introspective person. My mom went through one hell of a childhood. She was severely traumatized, in my opinion, by my grandmother and by her relationship with her. Despite that, my mom is not particularly introspective, and she doesn't really put that forward. She doesn't even know how to verbalize that, really. Of course that affected her, but she would probably, like, if you were to ask her why is she an hypochondriac, her reply would be, it's just my character. There wouldn't be like an analysis on what led her to become one. So I guess that could be an explanation. Like in general, people who are interested in doing podcasts, people who become friends, have some kind of common characteristics, some common ground. Could be that it's similar for you. It's kind of, you like talking to people, going into deep, let's say, into what affects them and what makes them who they are. So maybe that's the answer. At least that's, because it's either that or I have a fetish for people who suffer, and I really don't like the idea of that. That sounds something I wouldn't be I wouldn't enjoy the idea of that.
No, but yeah, I guess to your point, we all suffer. It's just whether you have the deep thinking part, which I think that introspection can actually feed into the depression. I mean, not in all cases, but the people in my life who I know who do a lot of thinking, myself included, it can get you, it can turn into negative rumination but the other thing is and that's also the only type of person I want to have on this platform is people who are willing to look at themselves, which as you have done, right? As in I have so many thoughts for anyone who's experiencing pain and all these difficulties, but it is, I think, really important to go through the journey that you've been on and that I've had to go on, and that I really think anyone has to go on if you want to move forward in life, which is to take accountability for yourself and to say, some like really shit things have happened, but I have to be responsible for my own life.
In that regard, I think that I say that almost as half a joke. Like at times I'm like joking, like, what are the red flags? What are red flags for you in people you're dating? And I'm like, never having been to a therapist is actually a red flag in my opinion. I think if you've never went through the journey of trying to really look into yourself, that worries me on some level. The fact that somebody at my age, around 30, never felt the need to even try to do that kind of scares me, to be honest.
I guess some people don't ever need to though, right? Or at this age they haven't experienced anything that...
But can that be the case? That's what I mean. Can it be?
Well, I think if you don't think too hard about things and you just kind of have a pleasant disposition, you are a calm person, and then you haven't experienced the loss of someone close to you, or you didn't experience, you had like a childhood where, nothing kind of major happened. I think it's more worrying though if it's probably someone, like me before I experienced depression, where I probably had all this stuff I hadn't processed. Like my brother passed away, I didn't deal with that, and
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thanks. It was a long time ago now, but it was but a lot of stuff, my whole thing is to do with childhood not feeling like I was good enough, and which is the hypnosis point, that it's like rewiring those beliefs. But so I would have been running around, the red flag for you, because I was running around doing all these things that were not fulfilling for my life, like trying to just achieve things.
How was it, if I may? Was it tough?
Well, I think it's like there's a lot of partying, there's a lot, relationship, the unhealthy stuff seeps out in areas and when you're young, I think you're more resilient,
You can drive, you can get drunk 5 days a week.
Yeah.
That doesn't affect you.
And just work and not really sleep and chase things. But I think now saying it, I'm like, well, it really makes sense that everything came crashing down. And then I've had to deal with it. But not that it's still obviously, and I don't know if you experience that, it feels like it's never ending. Even though you make progress, it's like I feel like those low moods and stuff, it's just something you have to keep on top of forever.
I refuse to believe that. I am still in that 100%, but I just cannot accept it. I refuse to accept that I will never break free of my cycle of mood going down and then going up. Like I just really that makes me angry actually. Like if I go back to that's actually a major point for anger. It's like that feels so unfair. It feels just so unbelievably unfair to have to deal with the crash, with the mood crash, that of feeling like completely without energy. Like I remember, like it happened to me during the pandemic. First months of the pandemic, I was kind of in disbelief of what was happening, and I spent them in Italy. I was working. We were working on an interesting project about trying to do some kind of intermittent lockdown. Our plan, like we were trying to apply some machine learning and mathematics techniques to see if there were ways to optimize the way that lockdowns were operated. And
that's so interesting.
Oh, it was pretty cool. Yeah.
This is for Imperial.
Yeah, we were working. It was like a task force. It was there was a University of Melbourne, I think, Glasgow.
That's where I went.
Yeah, Melbourne, Glasgow, Tel Aviv, and there were a lot of universities that were involved, and we were like me and the professor that I work with normally. We were kind of spearheading that. We came up with the idea and we were kind of dealing with it. And I was working, I think 16 hours a day easily. I worked for 16 hours a day for like 4 months, something like that, without stopping, not skipping a day, not taking a break on Sundays. I think it was my way of coping with it. And I remember at the end of those 4 months, we produced this paper, and a fever starts. I have one of the worst fevers I've ever had in my life. I think I've had like 40 degrees for like 3 or 4 days in a row and it couldn't drop.
Wow.
And I felt so good. It felt so good that I wasn't moving, that in some sense in my body that fever was shutting down me thinking. I couldn't think, keeping my eyes open was tiring. And oh my God, how good it felt to do that. Because just before this happened, I had reached a point where I was so exhausted, even being hungry was not incentive enough for me to get up off the bed.
And what was driving you?
Well, that's so at the beginning was driving me that it was cool, right? It's interesting. I am kind of obsessive with things and with with kind of topics. I have this kind of if I watch a series, I need to finish it in one night. If I watch a TV series, right? I won't stop until it's 4 a.m. in the morning. My eyes are bleeding, and that's just how I behave. It's not a healthy behavior, but that's like what I'm inclined to do. And with this, I felt like we were doing something useful in a period of need, and at the very end of it, what was driving was mostly the fact that I felt responsibility towards all the people we were working for. But yeah, no, like the last week before I got that fever, I was completely drained, and I was thinking about, like you were saying, like that behavior. It's just
Yeah. So I guess when I think about keeping on top of, it's like, okay, for example, yesterday I had this really negative emotion come up, and it was like, oh, why am I experiencing this again? But then you have to catch yourself, like, don't be a victim.
yeah.
But then when I could think about it, it's like, oh, you didn't sleep properly, and also you've been eating like absolute rubbish. So it's like, please, not in a cruel way, but it's like, let's try and look after myself better, because we don't like these negative moods. So it's like, okay, what do I need? I need sleep. I know what sleep my body needs. Give that to myself. Like food, exercise, sunlight, these things. Meditating for me. There are certain things that everyone finds. And then it's like, okay, but I guess it's more knowing that if you don't like look after yourself, you will suffer, and the suffering will be mental.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like that, and for other people, they never experience that, but then they're gonna experience something else.
I find it interesting that you say that, because one of the big, like you were mentioning, for you the big problem was not feeling enough. For me, it was control instead. For me, it was. I love to say, like, I love when people tend to say, I am a control freak, right? I wasn't just a control freak. I was a prisoner of control. I was quite literally a prisoner of my tight grip on my emotions, on the way I would behave, on the way I see that in my brother, actually. I have a little brother, and he's going through very similar things. He tried to control every single aspect of his life. He's at a point in his life where he feels like he has control over nothing, and therefore he tries to over control everything, and the second something, even little, escapes his planning abilities, as it will inevitably do, he loses it. And when you say I need to do these things, it's interesting, because for me it's actually try not to have too tight a schedule. Instead, it's like, how do I let loose? How do I find ways to not obsess over, I don't know, if I start a diet, I will record every single nutrient that I ingest every day.
Wow.
That will be the kind of way I'll do. If I decide to start meditating, as I do meditate, but it will be for 20 minutes in a row every day at a specific time. There will be a level of obsession that I naturally develop towards this kind of things that is, yeah. So,
and then, so it can become, you just become really inflexible.
Yeah, exactly. There would be a level of inflexibility, with me, which is really a pain in the ass, because on the other side you need a routine. You need those things that you were mentioning, right? So yeah, I guess I find for me the struggle, I guess, was also always find a balance between this level. Have you ever played a video game? And in those video games there is a specific ending, right? Or a specific series of achievements that you can do. So it might be, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. But I would have been one of those people who, for instance, if in a video game there is a map to explore, I would lose it if I don't explore it completely. Even though maybe the story is finished, even though maybe the game is over, I would need to explore it, all of it, period. And it would really cause me anxiety to not do that.
Interesting.
So that's actually, yeah.
So how do you manage that? Or what would happen, for example, if there was a day and you couldn't do, every day you're meditating 20 minutes at 8 a.m. and then one day you couldn't?
It's interesting. You know how I imagine it? It's like as if there is this kind of bar of 100%, right? And I feel like, oh, damn, now I will never be able to reach 100% because I skipped that day of filling up. You see, like, it's like you missed that little brick that you should have put in there today, and you didn't. And now...
So that's like perfectionism a bit.
Yeah,
it's
a level of perfectionism, which is... I guess you could call it perfectionism, but then again, I'm a smoker at the same time, so it's kind of a weird way of putting. I smoke, so quite regularly. So
yeah, but you can still be a perfectionist. Yeah. So I had that with meditation, like a streak. It was like I have to do it every day, but then I was cheating, like because I didn't want to give up the streak, so I'd like play the meditation. And be like doing something else because it's like, oh my god, but it's like this defeats the you know it, and it's like it's actually better to miss a day once in a while and be kind to myself. It's like, oh, okay, you didn't. So now I'll practice that. Like, yeah, like the other day I did that, where I like didn't wash my face before bed or something, and I was like, well done for like rebelling and having a day when you didn't.
Yeah, good job, Daniel. Way to go.
But the other thing I think that's really helped me, because I just end up, like, it sounds like you actually get productive, but I end up setting all these goals, all these things I have to do, scheduling, and then the expectations are so high, so I'll never meet my own standards. So then, so that's kind of what I'm going against with this podcast. That it's like I post them every Tuesday and Thursday. I need to have something to post. Like it can't and then you can't do the perfectionist thing. But the other thing is, and then it's like then I get to improve, right? Because and it's like I have to get over the cringeworthiness of how bad it is at the start. But anyway,
it's all right. It's pretty good, I think.
Yeah, see, I'm already so much better from whatever I started a few weeks ago. But, no, but the other thing was spontaneous time, which sounds, when I first heard someone scheduled spontaneous time, I was like, this sounds like some psychopath thing. And then this mentor I had at Cambridge actually really was militant that I had to do it. Once a week, I had to set aside a time period where I could not make any plans. So I had to... like that was a plan, so it was like Sunday afternoon I'm not available. I had to tell people like I'm not available, I'm busy.
Okay.
But what I was busy doing was this spontaneous time, and so I would not be allowed to make a plan for the time. Like I can't be like, oh, during spontaneous time maybe I'll right. So I had to allow the time to come and then do
just whatever.
Yeah, like go into nature, like go, whatever. End up at a
read a book. Yeah.
And that's really helped me with the. Undoing that obsessive...
That's a beautiful idea. I'm going to schedule a week of spontaneous time now.
You should. And so you can't let yourself work 16 hours a day.
Yeah, that sounds... Yeah, I guess so. I have this weird tendency where I constantly feel like I need to improve constantly and study. But yeah, I feel you. That's actually really interesting. I'm gonna try and do that. Thank you for the advice. That's actually really nice.
So what were the findings of that study?
That was actually quite interesting. It was a pretty difficult topic. So our idea was the following, and it sounds crazy, right? It sounds weird at the beginning. What if instead of doing 7 weeks of lockdown a week, we did 4 days of lockdown and 3 days of not lockdown. Now the first thing everybody says is, well, it doesn't matter because the people during those 3 days would get infected, and it wouldn't matter whether or not you do 4 days or 3. Turns out that actually the way viruses are spread follows this, how to put it, virus spreading is a function of the amount of time they're allowed to spread. Therefore, you can imagine it like this. You can imagine a continuum over this week. Imagine that we did 6 hours and 59 seconds, 6 days and 23 hours of lockdown and only 1 hour to go out. Not that many people would get infected, right? And you can keep decreasing it, and in some sense, you will end up finding that the amount that for each disease there is an optimal time that you can an optimal ratio between lockdown days and free days, let's say, that allows the disease not to spread. Now this is due to the fact that everybody used to spoke about the R0 value during the pandemic. The R0, like if R0 is above 1, the pandemic is spread, like the virus is spreading. If R0 is below 0, is below 1. Now, what ends up happening practically is that if you manage to modulate with this 4 days, for instance, of lockdown and 3 days of not lockdown, you can end up modulating and reducing and keeping the pandemic, in fact, R0 at a constant value of 1. So practically not allowing the amount of infected people to spread. Now, while it's interesting because it's actually, there is a beautiful, I'm a huge math nerd, and there's a beautiful mathematical model behind that. The issue around that is that logistically it's very difficult to actuate. It's actually really, like, even small things, like we were talking about trying that out into, the Scottish government was interested at some point into trying that out. And there were people like restaurants, right? A restaurant was like, so let me get this right. I open for 3 days in a week and then I close for 4. We were like, yeah. They're like, all right, so what do I do with the food for 4 days? Do I keep it in the fridge where it goes to waste? And they were like, I can't. I'd rather just stay closed. It doesn't actually help me to do that. We were like, all right. Yeah, fair point. So that study was actually quite interesting because it was a way of trying to study ways of mitigating. We were calling it mitigating the pandemic and mitigating the economic effects that the pandemic had on the general population. But alas, it wasn't really. There were too many issues from a practical perspective. At some point, there were similar studies. People were like, "Hey, why don't we let, for instance, 50% of the people go out and 50% of the people stay in lockdown, and stuff like that." All of them were just, they're just too difficult to implement. So
yeah, they were talking about that here at some point, like older people staying at home and younger people.
Yeah, it unfortunately turns out that wouldn't help. The truth is that wouldn't help because the mixing would still happen, and it's either everybody or nobody. Unfortunately, like you can see immediately this models the second, if the virus is allowed to spread a lot within young people, it will inevitably spread also within old people, unless we actually physically have an actual like glass dome where not even air can enter. It wouldn't help. So unfortunately that was just not a reasonable option at the time.
So is it frustrating if you do all this work for paper and it doesn't necessarily get...
Not really. I mean, there is a certain level of disappointment, but no, not really. It's what we do is like fundamental research. Like if you're in industry, you have a very specific goal. So you want to, recently, like some time ago, I was asked to do like facial recognition for cattle, like, which sounds funny. Yeah.
What?
It was for a project. I'm not sure I'm even allowed to speak about it freely because it was technically for a project that hasn't been funded yet. But the idea was that this specific company needed a facial recognition system for cattle, and for I can tell you off the record later, but the idea is that in that case, if my work didn't bring to an actual product, yes, I would be very disappointed. But when you're working in academia, like what you're really working for is you're literally probing in the dark, like as if you were into a big mine underneath a mountain and you're looking for diamonds. And sometimes you find one, sometimes you miss. And the truth is that you don't really know, like, and the point is you don't really know whether or not you have found the diamond until possibly much later in time. Just to give you an idea, there is this in 1920s or something like that. There was this paper published in mathematics about something called the Z transform. Now the Z transform was an algorithm to compute something called the Laplace transform of a mathematical function of a signal, but the Laplace transform operates in continuous time. So you're imagining a straight line and continuous. So time is like 0, 0.5, 0.57 and something like that. There is a continuum there. Whereas the Z transform operates in discrete time. And it was the 20s or something like that, and everybody was like, what the hell do I even need that for? Well, it turns out when 30 years later, roughly, computers became a thing, having something that operated in discrete time, as computers do, was actually quite valuable. And so something that looked completely useless for 30 years in a row became the most widely mathematical object used in industrial applications. By far, like nothing even compares to how used to how used the Z transform has been. And it's like the same way that people ask, why are we going to the moon? It's somewhat similar. You're looking for models, and what you're really producing is knowledge, and your knowledge that can be useful can also be completely useless. It can be a total waste. But the truth is that you can't know until very later in time whether or not something has been useful. So no, it's really a process. It's fun, it's engaging, and I personally love doing that. So
how did you end up on this academic path? Yeah. Did you do maths undergrad?
I did electronic engineering for my undergrad, then I did robotics on my master. I did my PhD in electrical engineering, and from there onward I've always done math because I've always felt like it always felt like one of the most powerful tools. So when I was 25, there was this conference in Florence, and I used to live in Pisa at the time. I was 23 or 24, and entering the conference, like the fee for the conference was like 600 euros. I totally didn't have the money, so a friend and I, we sneaked in through the kitchens, which in hindsight was, man, that was fun. Anyway, it was the CDC, it's called, the Control and Decision Conference, and we sneaked in, and there was this there was the main speech, and the speech was held by this guy called Raffaello D'Andrea. Raffaello, is it? Professor D'Andrea. Anyway, not sure if Raffaello is the name, but the name is D'Andrea from ETH. This guy is actually something. You should look it up. You should look him up.
ETH is the really good university in Switzerland, right?
In Zurich, yeah. And the guy is actually super famous.
Technical university.
Yeah, this guy is super famous. He has like all this videos with drones that do flips and whatnot. And I remember this guy. First slide, there is a Harry Potter. There's a Harry Potter image, and he goes, we are the magicians. And I look at him being like, what are you talking about? Math is literally the language. Whenever people imagining wizards doing weird things, making things elongate in different way, forcing, making, I don't know, turning a substance into another. It's like, it's not, we don't need really to imagine that. Math does that. Math is the language through which that actually happens. And I remember, like, and then he proceeds to show how through math they proved that if you have a drone, you can fly that with only one rotor, and you can make it do a backflip only with one rotor, because you can actually write down the equations and you can exactly compute what kind of torque you need to give it to make that, kind of torques you need to give it to make that happen. Yeah, and I guess that was, I loved math and I loved academia, but up to that moment I never actually realized, I'm not sure, I guess that made something click inside of me, and it made me think, yeah, that's it. That's what I want to do. I want to be that. I want to be that kind of person that does that. So
nice. Did you guys just sit in normal seats, having snuck in? Or
yeah. We stole everything. We stole everything from the buffet. It was great.
I'm sure if you had just written to them saying how passionate you were, they would have just let you in for free.
Most likely, but alas, at the time we didn't know that, and yeah, it felt like sneaking was more interesting. Sneaking in. So, and from that on, I ended up like doing a PhD, and then I worked in Dublin, and then here in London.
Was your undergrad and everything in Pisa?
My undergrad was in Palermo. My master was in Pisa, and then my PhD was also in Pisa. And then I did my postdoc in London, and then I became a research fellow here at Imperial College.
Postdoc in Dublin?
Yeah, postdoc in Dublin.
Where at?
UCD. In UCD, not Trinity, UCD was actually... It was like, I'd rather have gone to Trinity because it was in the city, but yeah.
UCD
University.
I only learnt this recently. UCD is like, actually, one of my Irish friends was telling me that if you're strongly like Irish Catholic, you just would not go to Trinity, because Trinity is
it's
like
for Protestants. Yeah, Protestant people. Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. In fact, like there was this saying that all the most of the ruling class of Dublin was formed at UCD, not Trinity. Like everybody was like, yeah, the true Catholic Irish, they come from UCD, not from Trinity.
Interesting.
Not sure if it's changed now, but yeah.
I went to Pisa for the... Sorry, I'm just saying random stuff.
No,
for the first time this summer.
Man, that's a small place, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I just really wanted to see the tower, because when I was younger, we'd come to Italy. My parents had a wedding in France, and whatever, we spent 6 weeks over here because it's a long way to go from Australia. I don't know, I'm telling the story, but I just remember it was like we were gonna go to, because you know when you're little, it's like you want to see the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Yeah. It was like we were gonna go to Pisa, and then it was like we were too naughty. My parents are probably going to listen to this and be like, that's not what happened, but it was something like we were punished or something and we didn't get to go to Pisa. And then I've just been like, my whole life I never got to see it, and I saw it this summer. And do you know what, because people always say, oh, it's so overrated. Right. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I have said that many times. I've lived that for 5 years, so I've been like 8 actually. No, 6 years. I've been guilty of saying Pisa is a bit overrated.
But I thought the tower was way more impressive than I...
The tower is impressive. No, the tower is definitely impressive.
It's like beautiful, and it's way different to what I thought it would look like.
It's impressive. The tower, and also the church next to the tower is impressive. Right? It's so big. The Battistero is absolutely insane how big it is. But no, the city is a bit overrated. Like the city is like, you aside from the old town, like, and you see Piazza dei Cavalieri, you see the tower, you end up being like, like half a day you see it all, and even less.
Oh yeah, we stayed for like 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. You literally go from the train to this to the tower and then go and then back.
Yeah, then we went to Cinque Terre.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's beautiful. Where exactly? Do you remember?
One of the 5 towns. I can't remember which one. The middle one, maybe.
Ah, it's all right.
I'm so bad with names.
Oh, it's all right. It's all right. Also.
But it was so much beautiful than I thought, because I was thinking, I didn't realize it would be so kind of rustic
and medieval.
Like
medieval, like.
Yeah, like it's not like you know, the southern Mediterranean that's like super built up, and it's really
they're
like
super
a village type vibe.
They're village, like they're like the like biggest place in, especially in Tuscany. I think the biggest town they have is Florence. Florence is not that big. Florence is actually a really small town, and they're all like, they look medieval. They look like they are stuck in the 1500. In fact, most buildings in Pisa, they are from the 1500. And Jesus Christ, don't they suck for renting? Holy fuck, how bad are they?
Really? They're just like falling apart.
That's a nightmare. Like being a student in Pisa, you should see places where I slept.
Really?
Oh
it's
my
like
god.
a dungeon.
Yeah, it's kind of a dungeon. Like they're small, they're so cold. Like they are so unbelievably cold. It's like I've never felt, like never in my life I've found a place as cold as Pisa in February. Like London is a joke compared to Pisa. An actual joke. If I going down in Pisa, I would have my gloves, my scarf, my hat, a big like boots. I would have my pyjama under my actual trousers, and my teeth would still like chitter. Yeah, I would still be shaking. It's a nightmare.
Huh.
How cold it is.
So you're happier to live in London, or you want to go back
That's
to Italy?
Good question. That's a great question. I love my job here. Like I love teaching. I love working at Imperial College. I love that we just funded a startup, and that, well, not just, it's been a year now. We're trying to close the funding round at this time. So no, there's still going to be a little bit of time, but I mean, I love London though. I love London and I love Italy. My ideal would be having some kind of hybrid where I can go back and forth.
Yeah.
I still haven't got to that point.
At least they're not too far away from each other.
No, it's not that far. Like Italy is not that far, but it's still 3 hours, and I mean it's still heavy to just take a. It's still not like I guess, I mean, you come from Australia. I understand that being like, I mean, oh my god, it's 3 hours away. It's like, shut up, it's 3 hours away. But yeah, it's. I guess. Yeah, I guess it would be nicer. The point is, I have nothing to go and do back home at the moment. You know what I mean? So it feels like it's, aside from going and seeing my family, I have no actual incentive to go back. Whereas I would love at some point in the future to build something that requires me to be in both places, and therefore have some kind of hybrid between the two. So yeah, that's the plan.
So what's this startup?
Oh, the startup. Oh, that's it's called GoEve. So we patented. We're in the process of patenting. It's a super simple idea. We just like, in the simplest possible way, we patented a multiplug for electrical vehicles. It's not really a multiplug. It's more of it's a box, right? It's a box that you can connect to an existing charge point, or to any charge point. And this box has an outlet that can go into a car, and another outlet that can go into another box. So into an identical box like this one. So we patented the box, and the idea is that all these boxes, you can imagine that you can have one charge point and then 10 of these boxes, one per parking spot. And each of these boxes will be able to coordinate the charging of all the vehicles that are parked there. And the interesting thing about that is that, well, imagine as it is at the moment, the way it is at the moment. You have a car, you go and you want to park it somewhere, you want to charge it. Well, you really can't most of the times, because there is somebody who's charging already and who just left their car in front of the in front of the charging station, and that's it. And so our plan would be, what if we electrify, between commas, every possible parking space at a very cheap cost? At the moment, we're not really planning on selling it to like city councils or places like that. We're more interested into big fleet managers. So imagine that you are like Hertz, and you need at some point to turn your fleet into an EV fleet, an electric vehicles fleet. Well, if you have 100 EVs, you need 100 charge points, right? Because if you don't have 100 charge points, what that means is that there needs to be somebody who physically takes the car, puts in front of a charge point, waits 20 minutes, parks it back every time, right? Now, 100 charge points, they cost a lot of money. We're talking about one charge point is £20,000 easily. And our box is 1,000.
Okay. And it's not, the problem with the charge points as well, right, is it's not particularly sustainable, right? There's all these issues with the amount of copper.
Too much. Like, it costs, and so you have issues with copper. You have the issue with the fact that if all these charge points, you could not turn them on all at the same time. It's just infeasible. Like the electrical grid could never, ever in the world sustain that many cars turned on all at the same time. But
so the box somehow
the box is just redirects the flow, right? So what you're doing is you're charging one car at a time, and all the boxes orchestrate themselves. Because I mean, think about that. If you have a charge point, and the charge point is powerful enough, you can charge up to 10 cars to full in one night. So you go there, you park your car, you leave it there for the night. Morning later, it was charged. You don't care whether it was charged at 2 a.m. or at 4 a.m.
Got it.
That's not an issue for you.
This is so interesting because I was at Cranfield University yesterday, literally learning about this stuff and seeing. So one of the issues they have is with the charge points, because now they have this ultra fast charging that they can do it in 6 minutes, but the cables are too heavy, and so it's it's certain people, if you're in a wheelchair or even if you're just a smaller size person, you physically can't lift it. And then, but because I'm working with this startup on a power solution, so it's a different type of.
What's it called?
This is so interesting. I mean, I feel like you just need to talk to them about this stuff because I'm doing the finance stuff.
Right.
But it's basically, it's different. Okay, this is the thing. I'm sure I literally should have asked if I'm sure I'm allowed to talk about this. It's basically, the problem is with energy, right?
Right.
That there is so much inefficiency. Like we are, everything's moving towards electrification because, electric vehicles
are super efficient.
But so it's supposedly electricity demand globally is going to increase 3-fold by 2050.
Easily.
Because it's okay, if we're using renewables, but that means everything's becoming electrified. And no one is thinking about that anything with a power supply, like this laptop.
Right.
Anything electric requires a power supply. The electric vehicles, but then you can even think of this laptop. And there is so much inefficiency. The laptop gets hot, the charger gets hot, all this heat waste.
The transformer that you have there, like it's like you're charging with AC and you're transforming that, and there is like an insane waste of heat.
So this is what their solution is. It's a different. It is
DC.
reducing that inefficiency. So it's using high frequency alternative
transformers.
Current instead of AC to DC. Yeah.
That's super interesting. Yeah.
Because it's like, why, we're just like, okay, create, like, build more renewable, blah, 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 which is, that whole world is so, like with
it's
solar
insane.
Panels, and they just end up in landfill, and
Yeah.
and they're in deserts, but you have to like wipe the dust off them, because then they don't.
Not only that, you literally create energy in DC, then you turn it into AC to feed it into the grid, and then you turn it back into DC. Like it's just
So this startup is looking at like transforming that whole way we use power, because no one's thought about this for like people, especially with computers. It's like people are so obsessed with like making it more efficient, like the microchip and what the processing, but no one's like, okay, the power supply, like no one's thought about that for like 50 years.
We haven't.
But then they can look at the electric vehicles, which is why that's crossover with your stuff.
That's super interesting, actually.
Because it's like and I'm not technical enough to know how it works with, but basically it doesn't have to be high frequency AC. They can also just, there are so many ways to make the power supply more efficient.
Interesting.
So they've got some applications with electric vehicles as well.
That's actually really interesting. It would be interesting to talk to them, because like that's actually our whole thing. Like the whole angle that we have is we want to electrify everything, because we are strong believers into the transition to EVs. I am, at least, and I know that all of my all the founders are together with me. We're all extremely like we're zealots almost in that regard, and it would be super interesting to see actually something in that regard.
What about hydrogen?
Hydrogen is interesting, but my understanding, at least up to now, like I know that there was an interesting breakthrough recently with hydrogen cars, but I am not entirely sure. Like I don't know exactly how to answer this question, because I have some ideas, but I feel a bit uncomfortable putting them out, because they're not really backed by super solid data at the moment. Therefore, I would rather not really go deep into that conversation, if I may.
Well, that just seemed to be, I mean, you need to speak to these other people who know way more about what they're actually talking about, but that just seemed to be the takeaway from yesterday, that it's like EV is maybe this like in-between solution, but long-term,
maybe we're going
the
to
sustainability.
I think that like I might be wrong. My impression is that hydrogen is a bit, we cannot really make it happen in a really efficient way, whereas EV, if we had the infrastructure which we might have, it could happen tomorrow. We could all just transition to EVs. I mean, aside from the insane price, but the insane price is because the demand is so low, right? Like it's, people are like, but EVs cost like 40,000. Yeah, because nobody wants to buy them. Therefore, you can produce only so many, and that's it. Like and that's one of the main issues with EVs. But I believe that hydrogen on the long term, I'm not sure at the moment what's the current status on them, might actually be the end solution. That might be the case, but we're talking in the same way like fusion energy, fusion power most likely is going to be the second we make it commercial, is going to be the ultimate way of producing electricity. But,
who knows when that will be.
Oh yeah. Let's see.
Okay.
That is so cool though. Yeah. It's like we're creating a sun. Sorry, I'm such a nerd about that. Like I find it so incredible that we are literally creating a sun. That is like something that that like not even in the Greek myths, like in the Greek mythology, they were imagining like a god making something so impressive as creating a small sun and harnessing its power, because that's really what fusion is. We are creating a little star, we're containing it, and it's sorry, I find that so beautiful. It's just unbelievable to me.
Yeah, well, I can't believe it's becoming an actual reality, because I remember learning about that in like high school chemistry of, it was so interesting, because I was like, why do we burn coal? And it was like, because what else are you going to burn? And I was like thinking of stuff you could burn, like, oh, like rubbish, like why don't we burn rubbish? And then it was like, you can't because of its and then it's like, now that's a big thing in this country, waste energy. But it was like, oh, what else can you, and then so it's like, how else can we get energy? And it's like, oh, well, here's this solution that creates a lot of energy, but it's like this impossible thing and will never be. And then isn't there a Batman movie, and they have like the one with Bane, and they talk about nuclear fusion?
I think so, yeah. I think that what they're mentioning is like they came up with this source of energy, maybe. Well, like they have that the Wayne Enterprise came up with fusion energy. You know where they have fusion energy? In Tony Stark. Tony Stark, you know the Marvel movies?
No. Yeah.
Iron Man, like vaguely. So, in this image of Iron Man, normally Iron Man has this little thing at the center of his chest that pulses blue. Now, I believe that should be this version of a mini nuclear reactor, which is absolutely ludicrous. Like we need, like the ones that we're building at the moment are like big as mountains. Apparently, according to the movie, this guy with the tools from literally from, like, I don't know, that you could find in any workshop, just made like a fusion reactor as big as like a palm of your hand. But yeah.
Huh. Which actor plays Iron Man?
Robert Downey Jr. playing Robert Downey Jr.
Uh-huh.
Like, who plays Robert Downey Jr. in every movie he interprets him.
Okay, I feel like we haven't talked about any of the things I thought we would.
Pretty sure it's alright.
But
that was really a nice conversation, so...
Well, can you at least say the thing about machine learning, because we did bring that up. Machine learning, how you are skeptical about machine learning.
Okay.
And what that means. Like, what even is machine learning? So,
skeptical is a big word, I would say. I'm not as skeptical. I guess that being inside of it, I'm not as hyped. I am an enthusiast in the sense that I find it's amazing what you can do with it, right? But
what can you do with it?
Yeah, exactly. So what you can do is normally you can take data from the real world and you can try to find an approximation to certain functions. So for instance, you can feed a computer millions of images of cats and dogs, and what the computer is really doing is it has a million knobs in there, and what you do is you feed the image of a cat, and at the output you program the system to output at 0 or 1. If it's at 0, it recognizes it's a cat. If it's at 1, it thinks it's a dog. But you know that initial image, it's a cat or a dog. So depending on the output, you can then, propagate back the error within the network and adjust all those million knobs in there in a way that eventually this system approximates a cat or a dog. It says, yes, that's a cat, or it says, yes, that's a dog. Now, the reason people are very excited about that, right? For good reason. Like, you can make incredible applications. So that's one. So you can use it for image recognition. You can use it to play to learn Go, right? Recently, AlphaGo beat the world champion of Go multiple times.
What is Go?
Go, it's a game. Yeah, Go, it's a game that is incredibly complicated.
Is it the Chinese game?
Yeah. think it's Chinese, but yeah, it's incredibly complicated. Like I don't remember exactly how many combination it has, but it's like, you know when they say that there are more possible chess games that there are atoms in the universe, I think that Go is unbelievably more than that. So Go is a lot more complicated than chess, and we, DeepMind specifically, may use the techniques from reinforcement learning to teach a computer to play Go. Right? The way they do that, it's they make it play millions of games within itself, and they explore, and you reward the games in which, and the moves that the computer made when it won, and you like penalize the ones that the computer made when it lost, and in some way the computer learns to play using that technique. But the truth is that it's very crude. This isn't, people might think it's refined. It's not that refined. Like when I say you penalize, that's what you're doing. Literally what you're doing is you're making the computer go randomly, play random moves, and then you're rewarding the computer for the good ones and the bad ones, right? And you do the same with with vision control. With vision, you do the same with natural language processing. Hell, you do the same. Have you seen DALL-E, like those images, like the creation of those images, where like you can write a word like a cyberpunk elephant, and the computer will actually create an image of his best guess of a cyberpunk elephant. They're impressive. Like the DALL-E 2 specifically is able to make images that are unbelievable. I'll show you maybe one when we're done. But the reason I still find it underwhelming in some sense is because I just told you that in order to teach the computer to learn, I need to feed it 1 million images. Now, if I take a kid and I show the kid the image of one cat, the kid will be able to say for the rest of his life whether that's a cat, whether something else is not a cat, and whether other breeds of cats are cats. The kid will be able to do that, like with no problem, with one image. That's all it takes. Machine learning, you see, I feel like the reason machine learning is popular, and I'll stop with that, like, because I'm talking a lot.
It's so interesting.
Like the reason it works is because we're using techniques that we have known for most of the techniques we use in machine learning, they were known 40 years ago, the vast majority of them. The only thing that changed is that now we can throw a lot of computing power to it. A lot. I'm talking a lot. Like a really impressive amount.
Yeah. So it's not... Yeah, because as you describe it to me, it sounds like any kind of... You know, you can get computers to do a regression of a line or whatever. You know, it doesn't sound like anything crazy. It's
regression
like,
is that. That regression is considered machine learning.
Mm.
Regression, like if you're asking what most people do when they do machine learning, they do logistic regression.
Yeah, which this is like most people listening have probably done this on something like even a Microsoft product.
Yeah.
Like drawing a line of best fit. Or, that's what we learn in school or on the maths graphics calculator. Like get it to draw a line through these points.
Exactly, that's it. Like minimize the error.
So is there any aspect that's like the machine is teaching itself? I thought that...
We do gradient descent. That like most of it's done by really first principles, and everybody who's done any minimization, any function minimization, it's really that. Quite frankly, that's why I say it's a bit underwhelming, because it can do impressive things. And I mean, it's underwhelming and maybe it's incredibly exciting at the same time, because you can see this in the other way around. You can be like, wow, we have this very simple technique, which is called gradient descent, which is just minimizing a loss function, a way to minimize a loss function with respect to some parameters. And that allows us to do incredible things. True, cool. But it feels like it feels like we're missing something fundamental and something. Yeah, like again, if I take the image of a whale, I show that to a kid, the kid will know, period. One. No need to show more than that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
I've never
that's it.
thought of it like that, but
And that's it.
so interesting.
And it's related to, you know, that aspect. But maybe I'm a bit too harsh, because that aspect is related to a lot of other things. Like I'm being very harsh on that. Like I feel like it's a bit unfair. It's like, have you seen the robots from Boston Dynamics? So you have these big robots that can run very fast. But the truth is that in order to run that fast, to run for like 10 kilometers, that robot would consume the equivalent of energy of a house, or like for a while, right? Well, you can do that eating a croissant. That's all the energy you need, a croissant.
I literally just ate a croissant today.
That's it. Like that's all you need to run for like 5 kilometers, and it's packed into this amount, and we are able to extract so much out of that in terms of energy. So, you know, when I making a comparison between us, or like between biological entities and machines, it's a bit unfair, but still, it feels like there is some level of fundamental misunderstanding or fundamental thing that we're missing from it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Okay, I'm super. Oh my god, it's 5:30. I'm aware of the time.
I kind of need to go in.
You need to go to the gym.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you'd be open to coming on again, because I would love to ask you about crypto and the students you teach, and also this stuff that we started talking about mental health at universities, and I'd be interested to get your view on that stuff. But I feel like I might get some people who are interested in this stuff to listen and tell me what they would want to know from you, because I feel like I'm not even going to be able to ask the best questions because other people.
Yeah, but I speak a lot, so like if you just let me go, like don't worry. Like I'm pretty.
Yeah. So I want, because it's all so interesting. But thanks so much for doing this.
No problem, Daddy. It was my pleasure. Thank you. Yeah, and like gladly, next time.
Is there anything else you want to say before I stop?
No, go ahead. No worries.
Okay.
I'm pretty good. That was actually really nice.